Coming up on Theater Talk.
I don't understand the poor. No, I don't understand the poor. The lives they lead of want and need. I would think it would be a bore. I've decided to marry you. I've decided to marry you. I've decided, though Henry's gone, that life goes on for me. I have thoroughly thought it through, and the man that I want is you. Though it's true there are quite a few who'd strongly disagree. Nonetheless, I will marry you. I confess that I'm frightened too, but unless I am wrong, you long for love as much as I. This is quite unconventional, I admit, but why should that matter a whit? And if you do not say yes at once, I think I'll die.
Hey! Bravo. That was Steven Lutvak, the composer and lyricist of a fine new musical at the Walter Kerr Theater here in New York, A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder, based on that wonderful old movie, Kind Hearts and Coronets.
Well, actually, we're based on the
book,
the
right?
same novel that the film is based on.
But they're not allowed to say it's based on the movie.
Because we're actually not based on it.
They're not based on the movie.
Right, because you never got the rights to the movie. Is that the
whole how much time you got? But if I may correct you, I'm actually the co-lyricist. Robert
Yes.
L. Freedman, who wrote the book, is the other co-lyricist.
Right.
Just for clarity.
Well, it's a wonderful new Broadway score, very much, I think, in the tradition of the great old Broadway scores that we love.
Thank you very much.
Because, as you were telling me off camera before we started, that you trained with Comden and Green, Leonard Bernstein at the very first New York
NYU Musical Theater writing program, which is where I met Robert L. Freedman, my writing partner. And yes, we were taught craft by all of them. Arthur Lawrence, as you said, Stephen Sondheim, Hal Prince. They were all alive and working and happy to teach.
What were some of the key things that you learned that you have applied to writing?
That a song, let me see, that's a great question. That a song is a one-act play, and that you have to be in a different place at the end of the song than you are at the beginning of the song. In fact, somebody said to me the other day, it was a movie executive who had been to the show and said he loved the fact that if you took the songs out of the show, it wouldn't work.
Interesting.
Which is a great way, which should be the case.
Right.
Yes.
Right?
And but the other thing I noticed with the score, too, is, and I think you probably might have picked this up from, Steve Sondheim, perhaps, but because you have so many distinctive characters in the show, each song is closely identified and linked with a particular personality. It's the personality that drives the song.
And that was our intention. Yeah. And when you have somebody as great as Jefferson Mays playing 8 different characters, and he sings as most of those characters, it was important to delineate a personality, a musical personality for each of those personae, because he basically walks on stage, gets killed, and we never see him again.
That's right.
So you've got a very brief moment in which to clarify who he is.
Can you give us an example of a song that you wrote and just tell us who the character
Jefferson
is?
song, yeah.
So we can see how the character comes to life in your
Sure. Actually, Jefferson's first big entrance. He walks on stage with a red fox hunting jacket and says, "Hands off that sword! Put down that book! Isn't it enough we let you look? I hate to dash your futile little hopes, but you pay your sixpence and stay behind the ropes." You know who he is?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And the chorus of this, I'll just slip a little further. He
No, please
says,
go ahead.
"I don't understand the poor." No, I don't understand the poor. The lives they lead of want and need. I would think it would be a bore. And on we go from there.
That's very good.
Go on.
More?
Yeah, please.
It seems to be nothing but stubbornness. What's all the suffering for? To be so debased is in terrible taste. I don't understand the poor. And we're off and running.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Now, ballads. You have a couple of. You always have to have a ballad.
We have very few ballads in
Yeah,
this
but you have a couple of those.
Yes, we
very,
do.
very pretty ones. Can
Yes,
you
we
give
do.
us
Thank you.
anything you picked up from the greats about writing ballads? Was there anything?
Well, I don't know if I learned this from the greats, but I will say that this is our lead character, Monty, who is our serial killer, after all, has been desperately in love with this woman, Sabella, who has been just out of his reach for his entire life.
Right, right.
And
But that's a good idea for a song. Someone you're in love with who's just out of reach. You can do a lot with it.
Yes, indeed, and many have.
Yes,
May
you're
I
last
say.
on the ground, you in midair.
For starters, yes, exactly. And no, we didn't write this out of town overnight. But in order to explain or to musicalize her slipperiness for him, I remember I basically walked over to the piano and played this intro. I mean, that's someone who is slipping out of your fingers. This is a nose that belongs on a coin, and there's that smile with a secret inside, and here are two eyes that are bright with a mischievous light. You try but can't quite hide.
That's a beautiful song. If you want to keep going, we love it.
Thank you. Oh, there's that voice with the promise of sin. And oh, those lips are a promise of bliss. And I know that your embrace is a treacherous place. There's danger in your kiss. This is the face of a woman a man could easily worship for all of his days. But a man could as easily lose his sanity deciphering your gaze. Oh, you are vain and you're heartless, and yet I can feel in you a shade of sadness that's barely detectable, that I still want you at all. I may live to regret. You're deceitful, you're delectable. You see the fate of a man who has had the misfortune to spend his life caught in your sway. I see Sibella, my Sibella, and I like her that way. Yes, I like her just that way. And I want you that way.
Ooh, that's a beautiful song.
Oh.
That's and you sing better than most composers singing their own stuff.
you very
I've got to
much.
say,
That's very
that's going to
kind
be a
of you.
staple, I think, on the whole audition and cabaret circuit. At some point.
I hope so.
Yes.
I
Now,
certainly hope so.
what, if you will, musical idiom are you working in this show?
We are in England in 1909, and so there's lots of Gilbert and Sullivan. I don't understand the poor. This to me is Chopin. The musical idiom, I wanted to keep the score consistent, but sort of at the same time sort of spread as wide as it could be. So so there are lots of British music hall influences.
Those patters. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I am standing here with poison in my pocket, standing on this frozen little dock. It seems that I've just let them skate my opportunity away.
Right.
Clearly of that world.
Right.
Sort of.
Do you have some music hall influences there?
Oh, well, actually, my dad was a cinephile and an Anglophile, and I remember we went. Do you you ever hear of the? What was it called? The Players Theater, I think?
Yes, yeah.
The last existing, I could be wrong, but at least in my mind anyway, it was the last existing British music hall in London. And I went there with my dad when I was a kid.
Really?
And I bought the music, they had a music book for sale. And
of all the songs that had been performed at
of
that
all the
theater
songs that,
years?
are we to part like this, Bill? Are we to leave this way? Yeah, fantastic things, oh God.
There was a great one called that an old comedian would sing, dressed as a woman, and the song was called "Nobody Loves a Fairy When She's 40."
Oh my God!
They would do that kind of stuff.
And of course they did. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing in here. There are lots of things in 3, which is the sort of waltz staple of that. But as I say, I wanted to have one foot in classical music, which is the Chopin thing,
right.
one foot in music hall, because it's so much a show about class.
Yes.
And in a way, one could say, somebody said to me recently that every single song in the show is about class, which is something that I don't think we were actually conscious of. I was very proud of that. Yeah. And so we wanted to do sort of a highbrow version of all of those things. And it was funny, it wasn't until we were in previews that I realized that what we are is a low comedy in a very fancy box.
Right, it's true.
Right?
Yes, I mean, the set is splendid. We'll show some shots of it now. Oh, beautiful.
So now comic songs. Can you give us any tips on writing a comic song? I guess it just has to be funny, right? That's all, it's got to be funny.
It has to be funny. I mean, one of the things I'll say is that Robert and I cracked each other up writing this. We had absolutely the best time, and one of the great delights of this is sitting in an audience and they're laughing at the same things that we found funny.
You laughed, right.
So it's a good sign, or maybe we're all crazy, I don't know.
Especially, I guess it's probably good to have a collaborator when you're looking for gags and funny.
There is no question, absolutely no question. So this is, Monty has decided his next victim is Henry Dicewith, who's a country squire. And they meet in a bar, and Monty saves Henry. There's a fist fight that Monty saves him.
So this is Bryce Pigman and
Jefferson Mays. And we start with Jefferson Mays, who's a little too interested in Monty. I'll leave it at that. When a fellow needs a little helping hand, who'll be there? It's almost guaranteed. No one else could ever really understand. Only another man knows what you need. And when a man has fallen down upon his knees, in such a moment, who'd be better than someone who's self-controlled, someone who's strong and bold, someone who's good as gold? It's better with a man. And on we go from there.
Very good. When we have composers on and lyricists, I like to talk a little bit about your background, some of the things that influenced you as a kid. You grew up here in New York, right?
I was born in the Bronx.
So were you going to musicals from the cradle, practically?
Yes. Yes, Oliver was the first show that I saw.
Oh, the original cast?
Original. And I got to coach Georgia Brown years later, which was thrilling for me. And I said to her, yeah, she was auditioning for the Three-Penny Opera that Sting did a number of years ago.
Oh, right, I saw that.
And yeah.
Didn't last very long.
But no, it didn't. But I was working with Georgia, and I said, I saw Oliver. I won't tell you how old I was. And she said, no, I won't tell you how old I was. Of course.
She was great, though. Wonderfully distinctive voice.
Yes.
Now, could you remember anything you played as a kid? Maybe the first Steven Lutvak
oh my God.
composition?
Actually, the first thing I wrote was a spoof melodrama.
Really?
And I only remember I was 6, and it began something like, the villain kissed the heroine upon her trembling cheek. She said, if you dare try that once again. And that's all I remember of it. Except that it had a dog food commercial in the middle of it. Because everything that I knew in terms of the world of entertainment had commercials.
Right, of course.
So I actually wrote a commercial in the middle of this opera.
So you had like the chuck wagon thing running around.
Yes, exactly, some version of it. And actually, my piano teacher came to see the show a few weeks ago. She's 93 years old.
Wow.
And her name is Gilda Nelson, and she was at the show, and we held each other and cried, of course, as you might imagine.
The first time you sat at the piano, how old were you? I mean, where was the piano? And
the piano was in the living room.
yeah, but your parents are not musical.
My parents are, no, Happy Birthday in my family is a nightmare, because nobody can carry a tune. God bless them. I love them dearly, but no one can carry a tune. But my grandmother apparently played by ear, so my mother decided she wanted to play the piano when she was pregnant with my sister. But as she tells it, at a certain point she couldn't play anymore. So the piano sat untouched, and when I was about 5 or 6, I began noodling around.
Yeah, yeah.
And,
but are you classically trained as well?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So you can do just about anything. I mean, like Julie Stein was classically trained, and I
Yes.
believe Charlie Strauss was classically trained, and Steve, of course, studied under Milton Babbitt.
Milton Babbitt, yes.
Yeah.
I was at the Manhattan School of Music, so I studied, seriously, as they say. And yeah, I mean, I could pull out the Chopin and really play.
When does it come in point in your life where you decide you can pursue a classical music route. I mean, I assume that you could have become a classical composer or a classical pianist and spent that way. And then when you say, I'm going to become a musical theater or tackle light music.
When I was an undergrad at Harper College, SUNY Binghamton, upstate New York, I auditioned for the piano department, and the head of the department said, you could be a classical pianist. And I thought, I don't know that. I played a Chopin waltz, actually, speaking of the influences and such. And it was also the same semester that I wrote my first show. And he hated it, and I didn't. And so that was sort of the decision right there.
Right. You had more fun probably in the musical theater than you'd be sitting by yourself in the
practice room.
Practice room all the time.
Exactly.
What was the first show about?
The first show was another spoof melodrama. It was a thing called Love Rides the Rails. And I decided I wanted to be an actor, so I auditioned for it, and they saw that I played the piano, and the director said, you play the piano? I said, yes. He said, you're cast. I said, what do you mean I'm cast? He said, you're going to play the piano. I said, well, I want to be an actor. And he said, shut up. You just got here. Be satisfied with what you've got.
Now, this is your first Broadway musical,
This is my first Broadway
How long were you working on it?
This was 10 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we had every obstacle you could imagine, we had. We had a producer who died on us. We had a lawsuit. And some of them are run-of-the-mill obstacles, and some of them were much bigger than that.
And was this your idea to do this before you met Darko, the director, and anybody?
Yes.
And it was the two of you saw the movie or read the book first? You must have seen the movie first, because your father, I think you said, was a cinephile, right?
Yes.
Oh, I forget. Oh, you're not supposed to talk about those things. Keep forgetting. It's based on the book.
It's based on the book Israel Rank.
Rank.
The film Hearts and Coronets and the musical A Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder are both iterations of the same public domain property, which is a novel called Israel Rank, The Autobiography of a Murderer, written by Roy Horniman in 1907.
You had a crash course on the history of copyright.
Oh, I could tell you more about copyright, make your head spin.
What was the first song that you guys wrote that sort of helped you establish?
For this?
Well, yeah, what the tone of this
I can tell you exactly what this was, and it absolutely, we knew from the get-go that we were onto something special, if I may say that. And what we wrote was Sibella's opening number, Monty. Don't you just love me in pink? Would you please? Maybe a flower for my hair? No, yes, no violet, no attar of roses, I think. Look, you brought me chocolate, no, I don't dare. Do you hate these earrings? Know the truth. Don't be kind, I don't mind, because I hate them too. No, don't squeeze. Monty, you're a tease. Oh, Monty, look, my shoe. I don't know what I'd do without you.
So once you had that, you thought, all right, this is the voice, this is the style.
Yes, exactly. And what I thought of this in a certain way was, it's a little bit of a cheap waltz. And though she thinks of herself as a little elegant, it's a little cheap. Yeah. It's just, and so, because she's a girl who has visions, who will, she'll only marry somebody with money.
Right.
And so that to me is the music of a social striver. Right. And she gets to have lots of colors later when she's lying to the police. And so she knows that it's a performance she's giving. But it's that horrible woman, that contemptible girl. Oh, make no mistake, she's a venomous snake, and she poisoned the Earl. And Mr. Navarro was a pawn in her plan. I have come here to save him. He's an innocent man. So you can see it's very purple. It's very purple. And I love that the fact that in this show, the 11 o'clock number is a purple quintet.
Well, it's interesting because you have a musical a bit like Steve Sondheim's Sweeney Todd, where we're rooting for two people that we should not really, in a proper moral universe,
that's right, and we want them to get together.
Right.
Never mind the fact that he's murdered 8 people.
But he's murdering them so he can get the money, so he can marry a girl who comes on with a cheap waltz.
Exactly.
who herself is out, who herself is a gold digger.
Absolutely. And yet we want them to be together, and we love them both. Well, we were very careful in that. At one point early on, somebody said, "Oh, the show is so old-fashioned," and I thought, "Oh yeah, it's just another musical about a serial killer." While it has its feet in old-fashioned, style, and may I say, kind of old-fashioned songwriting craft, it's actually very modern for the reasons we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very interesting statement on our times, that 20 years ago it would have been very shocking, let's say pre-OJ, it would have been very shocking to have a serial killer musical, but now we're just,
Pre-Silence of the Lambs.
You don't really give it, well, but the tone of this is so cheeky, and you just accept, oh, haha, he's killing Jefferson Mays over and over
Dexter,
again.
we've got Dexter, which is hugely popular about a serial killer.
Hugely popular. But part of the reason I think that we buy that in the theater is because the murder victims are all played by Jefferson Mays.
And the murders are so wacky.
And yes. And so that whatever happens, you know, like Weebles will wobble, but they won't fall down.
Right.
You know that you can't wait to see Jefferson again, so therefore you never take the murders seriously.
And you want to see what trick your director's going to use
and they're all
portray.
rich people these days, so it's the perfect musical for our
It's
times.
the 1%. We get to murder the 1%.
The 1%.
Yes, that's exactly
very popular. It does tell you how things have changed, though, because I remember the producer Marty Richards, he produced Sweeney Todd, and at one of the early previews of Sweeney Todd, a woman came up to him, saw him standing in the bank. She said, "Do you have something to do with this show?" And he said, "Yes, I produced it." She says, "Cannibalism? I've never." And she hit him with her purse and left.
I love that.
But this is 78 or 79?
That's exactly right.
But even going back to the original Chicago was considered to be too dark and intense when it first came out.
Which was only 2 or 3 years before that, right? 75,
that's right.
76, I want to say.
That's right. There's another lovely ballad in the show, too.
Yes, it's foolish to think it's also sung by Monty. And, of course, the ballads in this show are the exception songs, since it's all about comedy. And he has only really 2 moments in the show where he tells the truth. And at this point, he hasn't decided to kill them. He just knows that they've rejected him. And he's been rejected by the family, and he's been rejected by Sibella, the woman he loves and has loved for his entire life. And by the way, she has sung her cheap waltz, and she's kind of infected him. So here's another, he walks out of her apartment and sings, "Foolish to think she would marry you. Why would she sink so low? You've only a claim to a noble old name. Who could blame her for saying no? Foolish to dream she's in love with you. You're a fool to believe that kiss. The man who inspires such breathless desires, well, that's the man to dismiss. Foolish to hope she would ever see all that you really are. A man with no trade is no match, I'm afraid, for a blade in a motor car. He'll go far. Foolish to pray you will ever be the fellow she might prefer. Let's have a drink. It's foolish to think you'll ever stop loving her.
Beautiful, beautiful. I must say also that your lyrics are terrific, too. I mean, there are none of those fake, phony rhymes we get in a lot of shows now, and each one is
very much.
I'm sure you take a lot of care for that.
Yes, and there is, may I say, there's not a fake rhyme, there's not a misrhyme in the whole show.
Right, and also not rhymes that go, oh yeah, June spoon, soon we know the rhyme is coming. You always keep us on our toes that way.
Yes, that's another thing learned from NYU. May he say, pointing in the air.
Very good. You learn from the best. It's
well,
clear.
I mean,
it's clear.
So. Thank you very much.
Right. All right, we've only got 1 minute left. Stephen, can you play us out with a rather jaunty number from Gentleman's Guide to Love and Murder at the Walter Kerr Theater, starring our good friend Jefferson Mays, who
and
plays
Bryce.
and Jefferson plays all of the members of a very rich family. They get bumped off one by one.
This is sung
very
by
funny song. And your co-lyricist is?
Robert L. Freedman.
Robert L. Freedman. Okay, so set us up for this one.
And
this is sung by Lady Hyacinth. Jefferson plays men and women.
Yes.
And she is a philanthropist who's is searching for a cause. And Monty suggests that she go off to Egypt. And she says, yes, Egypt, land of pharaohs, and so on. And there's wonderful music orchestrated by Jonathan Tunick. And she says, we'll populate an orphanage in Cairo with foundlings from the reeds along the Nile to watch a creature grow, to swaddle it and know the joy of its pathetic little smile. The news will travel soon enough to London. Our selflessness will meet with great acclaim. The sniping will be stilled and the empire will be filled with homes for bastard children in my name.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being our guest tonight.
So my pleasure. Thank you.
Good night. Don't murder your relatives.
I'm grateful indeed for your gracious bestowment. Yes, Wadsworth, I told you. Be just a moment!
Now, Monty dear, I think I know to go.
Oh!
I still want to marry you.
Even so.
I'm decided to marry you.
Just go. I'm longing to marry you. Yes, I'm delighted to marry you, marry you, marry you. Shame you must go.
Our thanks to the Friends of Theater Talk for their significant contribution to this production. Theater Talk is made possible in part by the Frederick Loewe Foundation, the Cory and Bob Donnelly Charitable Fund, the Noel Coward Foundation, Carrie J. Fries, the Dorothy STRELSIN Foundation, plus public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs, the New York State Council on the Arts, a state agency, and the Theater Development Fund's Technical Accessibility Program, which helps provide closed captioning.
We welcome your questions or comments for Theater Talk. Thank you and good night.